Welcome back. In this video, we're going to adjust our code so that we can actually interact with our application, because so far it doesn't really do anything, right? It displays hello Dennis, but we cannot press any buttons. There's nothing to do with it. Just to look at it isn't interesting enough, I believe. Well, let's change that by actually adding a button to it. So what I'm going to do is here in the palette, I'm going to select a button and I'm going to drag it into my application. So let's just put it in here. And let's scroll in a little bit. You can see that now the button is in our application. It says button and it has the, well, text hello Dennis underneath it. Now, there is a little bit of a problem with this button because it doesn't have any constraints. So it would look like this here, but once we run it on our application, on our device, you can see we get this little error here. So let's look at it and we can see the button jumps over to the top left corner. And that is because we are inside of a constraint layout. Here you can see that, and it needs constraints. So it needs to know where items should be displayed. And because our button doesn't have any constraints, it's just floating somewhere, it just thinks or assumes that we want to position it at the top left corner, which isn't what we want. What we actually want is we want this button to be exactly where we have it right now. Now we can go ahead and magically infer constraints by clicking this button here, and then it will magically just add this constraint so that it's just on top of our hello Dennis text, which is 33 pixels up from it. So if we rerun the application now, we should see that now our button will in fact be just on top of it. Now a cleaner way would be not to let Android Studio do it for us, but actually do it manually. Therefore, you can hold the mouse button on top of the button and then drag this circle to the top. Then drag this right circle to the right and the left circle to the left. So this will position the button towards the center. And then let's add another constraint so that it's connected to our hello Dennis text. So now this button will have constraints and it will be centered pretty much between all of its constraints. That's the default. And we're going to later on see how we can change the UI significantly by making, well, a bunch more changes, but that's going to suffice for now, I believe, even though I would like this distance here to be a little less. What you can do is you can go to your layout here at the top right corner here on the attributes and then change the constraints that you want to have. So you can see currently it just says that there is a vertical bias of 50%, which just means it is in the middle on a vertical level, and the same goes for this horizontal bias, so it's 50% at the horizontal bias. So here, if you want to change that, you can click on this X button. It will delete this constraint entirely, but you can also override the distance that you want to have here. So if I'm adding 20, you can see now it takes the bias into consideration, but at the same time, it adds another 20 pixels distance. So if you were to add negative values, you would see it goes down here. So that would be one way. The other way would be to just drag this bias towards the bottom. So it's going to have a bias further towards the bottom. So this will make our button be closer to the hello Dennis text. There are other ways to play around with it and change it, but I would just say for now it's good enough to play around with the editor. Most of the time, however, in the future, we're going to work with the code, but I'm going to give you a pretty extensive introduction into what XML code looks like and how to use it for your purposes. So now let's make a couple of changes to this button that will be relevant, not just its appearance, but also what the text will say. So you can see once you click on this button and you scroll to the declared attributes, you find that it has a text, which currently is just saying button. I want to change that. I want to tell it, click me. Okay, so it should just say click me. Once you enter it, you can see that the name or the text changes that is appearing on the button. Now, there is an ID for any given item that you have in your user interface. At least you can set up an ID. This ID will allow you to access the UI element in your actual code. So if I want to, for example, register, I click on that button or I tap on that button in my code, I need to know which button was pressed because maybe I have 5 different buttons in there. So we always need to have an identifier or an ID which tells us what item was pressed. In this case, if the click me button was pressed, then the ID would be for that button would be just button. I would like for it to have the name my button, like so. And then this rename option comes up and I can refactor it. So rename the ID source button and its usage to my button. So I'm just going to do that. Now I can access my button. And let's actually do that. Let's go to our main activity and let's access my button. Therefore, we need to get access to this button. Therefore, let's create a variable here by using the val keyword. We're going to see what this means in particular once we look at Kotlin fundamentals. But for now, just follow along because I want you to have an application that actually does something in this video, and you're going to then step by step later on understand how all of this is working. So first we need to give this a name, and I'm going to call this one click me. So button click me, and then I'm going to use the find view by ID method, and I need to say that I'm using a button. So you see, once I enter button and I press the enter key inside of those brackets here, you can see that this new widget here at the top pops up. So this new import, which says Android widget button. So this now allows us to use the button class, which basically says, okay, now we can use buttons in our Kotlin code. Now here in those brackets here, in those rounded brackets, we need to say which button we want to actually find by its ID, because that's what this method does. So it just says, okay, find a button by its ID. So find a view. A view could be a button, it could be a text, it could be any viewable item in your activity main XML. So the button is a view, this text is a view, and well, any of those, like they also even have the name, like image view, recycle view, they even have the view in their name, but you can access them directly. So here, let's say I want to find a button that was called my button. Okay, so I gave it the name my button. So now I can access it. Now this button click me, let's quickly change its text to haha. Okay, and then let's rerun the application real quick, just to see if we can actually access the button. You can see now it says haha and it doesn't say click me anymore. That's because what we did is here we got access to this button, and here at this line we overwrote the text of the button, so whatever the button shows as its content. So, but that's not what I'm interested in. Usually what you want to do with buttons is you want to be able to click on them and then execute some code. So in order to do that, let's add an action to our button. So let's use this variable button click me in order to set an on click listener. So here, if you enter this, you can see that there are multiple options. I want to use this on click listener with those curly brackets. So let's double click on it. And now inside of those brackets, I can now execute what I want to happen once I click on the button. So let's just use the same example that we just had, where we just set the text to haha, for example. And I would say you clicked me. So something like that. So now I'm changing the text of the button to haha you clicked me by executing this code once we clicked on the button. So this on click listener is basically just listening or waiting for us to click on the button. So we're just saying, okay, once we click on the button, do something with it. And what should it do? Well, everything that is inside of those curly brackets, which is in the current situation just this one line of code. You can have multiple lines of code here, that wouldn't be a problem. You can see curly brackets here as well. So for example, this onCreate method here also has curly brackets. It starts here and it goes all the way down here. You can even press this minus button to see where it starts and where it ends. The same goes for our class. You see it has curly brackets. It starts there and goes all the way up to line 18. This is basically just the starting point here of this body of the code block, so to speak, and this is the ending point. And here, this one is the starting point of this onClick listener. This is the ending point of this onClick listener. So let's run this real quick just to see what's going to happen once we click on the button. And you see it says, haha, you clicked me. So well done. We changed the button, click, and it works. But now what I actually want to do is I want to access my text view, because I don't want to change the text that is on the button. I actually want to change the text that is in my text view. So how could I access it? How could I change it? Well, it will be a similar approach to what we've done here, where we find the text by its ID, but instead of using a button here, we would use the same name that this item has here. So here at the top it says text view. Okay, so this is AB, this is a text view. Currently it has the ID of 2 in my case. So if you go to the code here, not the design, you can see that it is a text view. This is, by the way, also the internal class name that you would have to use in your main activity, and you will have to import it the same way. So if you feel super confident and you really want to try it by yourself, I would recommend that you pause the video now and you try to access the text and change the text of the text view once it's clicked. It won't be easy, but you basically have to do a similar thing to what we have done with the button. Okay, so I hope you paused the video and tried it. This will not have been easy, but if you managed it, congratulations. So basically what you need to do is you need to get the ID of your text view. Now you can get the ID of the text view the similar way as we've done earlier. You click on the text view here, and then you look at its ID right here. Now, if you want, you can change the ID. By the way, you can find the ID here as well, right? It's at the very top because it's very important, but you can change it from here as well. So in my case, it's called text view 2. In your case, it might be called text view without the 2 at the end. So what's important is that you use the one that you have in your case. So I'm just going to change that to text view because it's very likely that you have the ID of text view in your case. So I'm going to refactor that real quick. Okay, so this is now going to be my text view. That's the default ID. Of course, we could give it a proper name, saying something like my number text view, because I want to change it to be numbers later on. But for now, let's just use that. Let's go back to our main activity code. And now let's create a val, and I'm going to call this TV my text view. And I'm going to find it by its ID, find view by ID. And here I'm going to use the text view keyword. And then in the brackets, I need to give it the r.id, and I call it text view, right? Text view, like so. Now it's complaining because text view doesn't exist, because it doesn't know what to do with this text view class, as it didn't know about the button earlier. But now what you can do is you can just right click into it and then show context actions and then import. Alternatively, you can also hover over it and just press Alt Enter and then click on import, and it will add this import line here at the top, which now allows me to use the text view. Okay, so now we have this text view. Cool. So let's go ahead and use it. Let's now, instead of changing this button click me text, let's actually change the text of that TV my text view. So I'm just going to use the text property again, and I'm going to use the equal sign. So this equal sign basically just assigns something to this text, and I didn't really say that before, but that's what basically is happening. So I'm assigning something to this property here. So what is it that I want to assign to the text property of my text view? I want to assign, maybe let's just use this, haha, you clicked me for now. So now once we click on the button, both of them will change to haha, you clicked me. So let's test this real quick. Okay, click on it and you see both of them have been changed to haha, you clicked me. Now that's not necessarily what I want. What I want instead is I want to write a little program that is going to be a people counter. So each time that I click on the button, the number that is displayed should be increased by 1. So therefore, I'm going to create a new variable. This time I'm going to use the var keyword, because this is going to be a variable that will be changeable, and we're going to see what that means later on. But no worries for now. Just follow along now. So here I'm going to call this one times clicked, and I'm going to assign a value of 0. So this variable now is going to hold the amount of times that we clicked on the button. So what I'm going to do each time that we clicked on the button, which means that this code will be executed, I'm going to increase the value of this times clicked by 1. So let's do that real quick. Let's get rid of this button clicked me text here. Let's say times clicked will be equal the old times clicked value plus 1. So that's how you can assign a value here. This is just a slower way of saying it. Of course, you could have also just said plus equal and then get rid of this times clicked, and this would have done the same trick, but that would go too far for now. It's just what Android Studio doesn't like. It just says, hey, this is inefficient, so just do it quicker with this plus equal sign. So you can click this replace with and it will do the trick for you. Okay, but I'm just going to keep it like this. So times clicked will be the old times clicked plus 1. Okay, and then we just need to assign the value of times clicked to our text view here. So instead of just saying, haha, you clicked me, we want to display the amount of times we clicked on the button. Now the problem is that times clicked is a number. And if you look at this text here, it actually expects a text, so a string and not a number. And we can very quickly change that by using toString here. So .toString will just convert this text into a string, and then this error appears. So again, you don't have to fully understand what's up here. No worries, we're going to go over all of those things. The idea behind this video is really just to give you a quick result of having an application that you can then test on your own phone and just have available. So for now, let's go back to our activity main and let's change the text from hello Dennis to, let's say, 0. Okay. So text, set it to 0. It will be this red 0. And now let's run the application. And let's click on the button, and you can see now it changes magically to 1, 2, 3. And each time that we click on the button, the number is increasing by 1. Now, if we were to close the application and we go back to opening it up, you can see it starts at 0 again. Once we click on it, you can see the numbers go up consecutively. So what is going on here? Holy smokes, Dennis. Well, the thing is, what we have done is we have our main activity code. So this is the class in which everything happens. So this is the view in which everything happens, right? And then we said once the application is created, we want this code to be executed. And what basically happens is it sets the activity main as the layout that is used, which is this XML file. We changed this XML file with our designer by dragging in a button, by changing the text view and so forth. And we gave those IDs that we could then access. Now in our main activity, we access them by using the find view by ID method. This just allows us to say, okay, what is it that we are currently looking at? So we're searching for a button that has a certain ID, and we want to assign this to this variable called button click me. So we're doing that with this button click me. We're doing that with our text view. This text view, by the way, is of the type text view, and we can very easily find that out by, well, either looking here, you see a text view is called text view and the button is called button. And you can also go to the code. You can see this is the text view and this is the button. So these are the class names that you need to import as your widgets. So import Android widget.button. And we saw that this was done automatically for us by Android Studio. Thank you for that. And then we have this variable called times clicked, and we use var here because we want it to be able to change. But as I said, this will be something we will cover later on in more depth. And then we have this button click me. This button that we have defined earlier. The cool thing is this button click me comes from the type button, so it is of type button, and the cool thing is this, that buttons can be clickable. So there is this method called setOnClickListener that we can then execute. And basically what we add as code inside of those curly brackets will be executed once we click on the button. So what we're doing now is we're increasing the value of this times clicked from 0 to 1 once it's clicked for the first time, and then increasing it by 1 each time that it's clicked. And we're changing the text entry, so the text property of our TV my text view to be whatever the times clicked currently is as a string. So this line here, there's a lot going on here. So no worries if you don't fully understand each detail, but the general idea is hopefully graspable for you. Now, before we go to the next lecture, I want to quickly show you one last thing. And that is how a toast works. So there is this beautiful thing called toast. Let's use it. It's not the thing that you can eat, but it's just something that you can write something on the screen with. So you use the keyword toast dot make text. Then you need to pass in the context. I'm just going to say this. Don't worry, just follow along. And then you say what you want to display. Hey, I'm a toast. And then you just say how long this should be displayed. And here you can just use toast length long. And then finally, we need to show this toast. Okay, so dot show. So if you want to display this beautiful thing that I'm going to show you in a second, just add a code like this and test it. And you see, it says, hey, I'm a toast. You can also say something like, hey, Dennis. Let's run it again. Click on it and you see it says, hey, Dennis. Okay, so that's what you can do with toasts. And you don't need to understand what's going on here in depth for now. The only thing that you need is this structure in general, and then you can just replace this text with whatever you want to display there. And we're going to see what make text means, what this means, what contexts are, what this length long is, and what this show method is, and so forth. You're going to learn about all of these things. This was just a little bit of an introduction and creating a small application that allows you to, well, do something. So now you can install this on your phone and you have your first little people counter, where now if somebody comes into the bus, or you are a teacher and you need to check how many children did come into your bus, you can just use this application now. Congratulations.